I think the number one question panelists worry about is fundraising. And so this is really important, and I'm so thankful to have your expertise with us today. Um, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. So please tell us about yourself and your experience with fundraising, and we will start with Addie on that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Addie Lavis. I currently live in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I just recently managed Ashley Hinson's reelection campaign here in the second district. So I did a lot of the local fundraising as well as online direct mail fundraising. A lot of that fell under my purview. And then in 2022, I worked for Senator Ron Johnson as his digital director. Another thing that fell under my purview was, again, the digital online social media fundraising, all of that fun stuff. So I've done a lot of work in the digital space as far as raising money. So.
All right. Well, I'm Mary Earnhardt, and I am the president and CEO of the Iowa Gaming Association. I just started this position in January. However, before that, worked in the Iowa Senate Majority Leader's office for 8 years. And prior to that, I had worked on a number of campaigns, mostly state house and state senate races, but I've been doing this. I started out when I was 13. My mom was a county supervisor in Eastern Iowa, so I've been involved for a very long time, and I've done a lot with fundraising, and so I'm just really happy to be here today. Thank you.
I the earlier you start, the more passionate you are, I think, often. That's wonderful. Thank you both. Okay, so asking for money is hard. How can candidates overcome confidence barriers when discussing campaign finances or donors or just even asking for donations? Where do they get started?
Well, I think the easiest part of fundraising is when you have to say you sell yourself. That's where you start your first pitch. And the first thing to do is to make a list of all of your friends, all of your family, and send them a letter because they're going to be your easiest asks for fundraising. And they're going to be your initial seed money for your campaign.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, it's uncomfortable, right? Asking people for money is uncomfortable, but what we like to say on our team is if you don't ask, the answer is always no. A lot of the people that you're going to end up talking to are people who get asked all the time and are asked for political support. And so by showing up, have your elevator pitch of what it is your candidacy will mean to your community, why you're running, what's your why. I think as long as you have those things ironed out and you can say to a donor, here is the value add of me getting elected, or this is what my organization is going to do in my community. I think that's really important and that will make a difference too with a donor. But the moral of the story is if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
As a side question, both of you have had to learn how to do this. Are there steps you take, like do you hype yourself up? Like, how do you go about the initial, like, okay, here we're gonna just ask for money?
I think probably the when you're doing the one-on-one asks, which are always the hardest of the fundraising, is start by building a relationship with that person. You may not make the money ask the first time you meet with them, but it's getting to know them, getting to know what issues are important to them. I worked for a candidate, and at first, that was exactly what he did. All of his fundraising meetings, he didn't go in and specifically ask for money. He went to get to know them. And then the next time, he started making the asks. And that's really important. It's a lot easier to make that ask once you've had an initial conversation.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add there with Mary. Typically, after we have a conversation with a donor, I do a lot of email follow-up. That seems to be the easiest way to get in front of people post meetings. And typically, unless they've committed to a specific number, I just say, hey, this is the max amount you can give, but anything you would give would be appreciated. And that way, you're just kind of giving more information on this is what you're permitted to give. Um, Instead of going in and saying, well, can you send $500 this quarter? It can make it a little bit more comfortable. And then they can decide what works for them, what works for their budget, what kind of gifts they're planning on giving that year. So
That's really good. And individual donors can only give so much, right? That's the rule. So that's a good way to do it. Okay,
it's different. It's different between the federal and the state level. I just want to caveat that. But at
thank
the
you.
federal level, you have specific giving limits. Yes.
And at the state and local level, it's unlimited, other than you can't accept corporate contributions.
Okay. See, you guys are so good. Okay, so what resources and networks exist specifically to support candidates in fundraising before they, while they're doing their campaign?
Mary, do you
We'll
want?
start with Addie on this one.
Oh, great. Okay. Uh, I mean, honestly, the network is, and Mary already said this, but typically the easiest place to start is people who are in your community, whether that's your neighbors, that's local business leaders. There's lots of organizations that want to have candidates come in and speak to them, and that could be a good way for you to build up a network and get to know people in the financial space, and then ask them later on. So I would always start with people you know in your community who are politically involved in giving, and go from there.
I would agree with that, as well as and one avenue is political action committees, which are set up by a lot of trade organizations and individuals, an affinity group. So that's another way to do it, although those typically get more involved at the state and federal level, but you never know until you make the ask there. And it may be, for example, there's a pack for building associated builders and contractors. Well, you may work in that field. So the first thing to do is to go to that pack, because they already know where you are on a lot of their issues because you work in that industry.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think PACs are specifically scary if you've never worked with them before, because it's not something you run into every single day of your life. When working with PACs or any fundraising, is there a difference between like national and local that people should keep in mind as they go about beginning making asks? We'll start with Mary.
Okay, yeah, sure. A lot of the PACs are organized at the state level, and then there are others that are organized at the federal level. And the PACs at the federal level typically donate to federal candidates, and those that are under the jurisdiction of the Iowa Ethics and Campaign Disclosure Board typically give to state and local candidates. So that's probably one of the bigger differences between the two. But I do know that some of the federal level PACs do contribute to state and local races at times. I think it's a little bit easier when you're dealing with an Iowan. If you're running for the state house or the county board of supervisors or one of your city council elections, to reach out to those that are at the state level.
Yeah, did you have anything to add?
There. I think that was perfect. That was great.
Perfect. We'll have you answer this next one first. Tell me, you mentioned earlier using digital platforms and like email and also social media. How do you use those to engage potential donors? And are there any you would specifically recommend? And that's for both of you, but we'll start with Addie.
So, one of my favorite strategies is social media fundraising. And the point being there, when you're looking at the digital space, a lot of operatives will tell you that we have a limited pool of donors, right? Everybody's going after the same 5,000, 6,000. I'm sure it's more than that, but let's say in Iowa, for example's sake, 5 to 6,000 donors. You want to differentiate yourself, and you also want these people who, to be on your team and want to already have an affinity for you and already be bought in on who you are as a candidate. And I found that to be particularly effective in 2022 with the senator. I was able to post a lot on social media, and we raised a lot of money from people who were just naturally following what he had to say, had already kind of been bought in on what he was doing. And that was a super easy way for us to bring them into the fold. I think with digital donors in particular, given the current environment, a lot of these donors are burnt out. They get, membership expiring emails, and they get 15 emails a day and 20 text messages a day. And a lot of these people get really burnt out by the end of the election. And so my philosophy when it comes to digital fundraising is making sure that these people get information that they actually want and that they can use. So just want to make sure that they have the information while also, contributing to our organization. So one of the ways we do that is with a newsletter. We talk about whatever is happening for a given candidate, and whatever articles they might be in, what legislation they might be working on, obviously within the ethical bounds that govern, what you can and cannot talk about on a federal campaign. But I think that's a really easy way for an online donor that you may not know personally, that you may not get to talk to every day, to still keep them as part of your team, and help continue to hopefully foster that relationship with them moving forward.
And I would say about 12, 13 years ago, I ran a congressional race, and that was just when digital donations and platforms were starting to really get big in the political world. And somebody told me every single email you send out, whether it be a campaign update, a newsletter, all of that should have a spot on there for somebody to donate. Now, I mean, like a donate button, which would link to online donations. There's a lot of different platforms that you can use that, but I would just also look at that as a go through the fees that are associated with that, but make sure you have a way to capture online donations. Not a lot of people send checks in the mail anymore.
That makes a lot of sense. And I like the newsletter idea too, because like opt-in means they don't get sick of you as fast, I think, probably.
Right? Like you're part of this, quote unquote exclusive online community, and you can be part of the team. And, I very much want to make sure that anybody who's supporting a campaign that I'm working on has the information about all the great stuff that we're doing so they can go help be our champions in their community, because I can only be in so many places. So making sure those people have that information, I think, is really an important part of the process.
And then they can talk intelligently about, yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, so what advice do you have for new candidates who want endorsements or financial support from issue-specific PACs? And are there any red flags that people should keep in mind when evaluating potential PACs? On this one, we'll start with Mary.
Sure. Thank you. I think one of the most important things to note is many issue-specific groups have a survey that they have the candidates fill out. And before they just and their board may meet to determine whether or not these survey answers fall in line with our priorities as an organization. Therefore, we want to support this candidate. The most important thing on that is to make sure you're honest and that you can live with the answers that you have in the survey. For example, the renewable fuels group, they always have like a 6-question survey, and you can say yes, no, opposed, explain, and just make sure to fill those out in the way that you would represent that position in whatever office you're holding. And reaching out to them, whether it be like if you're interested in environmental issues, there are certain PACs that are environmental focused. Start looking at what their issues are and could you support them in that way? Is probably the best way to do that.
Yeah, I'd agree with Mary. I think it would just make sure that you're familiar with the issues that each pack cares about. A lot of them have specific legislation they want to see passed. Make sure you're familiar with that, um, because that's definitely something that they are invested in. And so if that's something that you could potentially, want to support, that could be a good match for you. So I think that's a good way to kind of get into that space. But yeah, look at those surveys. Anything you write on that is going to be public record. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, I think that's a great place to start to find those groups that maybe match what you care about and what you want to see done, whether it's the local, the federal level.
Is there a good place where people can find out what is even available? Sorry, this is a follow-up question, but if either of you can answer it.
As far as PACs that are state regulated, the Iowa Ethics and Campaign Disclosure Board on their website it's somewhat challenging to navigate, but you can see the list of all of the state regulated PACs are out there.
Yeah, and the FEC has something very similar. You'll find if and when you do file your paperwork with the Secretary of State's office, a lot of these surveys will naturally kind of come to your campaign PO box. Um, and that's just because it becomes public record, and a lot of these organizations will look at who has filed and send everybody on the list a survey. So just keep an eye on that. Typically, those start coming in, I want to say like February of the election on year. So right after all filing has finished, they start sending those out because they want to start putting together their issue surveys. A lot of them do candidate questionnaire guides for different voters that are sent out throughout, in our case, throughout the district. So.
And just another follow-up that either of you can answer. Red flags. What is there anything that people need to just kind of keep in mind? Are there for anything that they should be aware of if something's not like registered or?
I would just, if something seems you can't find them online, just call the person who sent it to you and find out and say, I want to get to know more about your group. I received this, and just ask the questions because that's the easiest way to find out. There's always new groups forming, and they may not have filed paperwork yet with either the FEC or IECDB. So that's what I would do. And I think Addie made a really good point about the surveys that they are public. A lot of organizations post them online or send them out to their membership groups. So just keep that in mind as well.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Um, I've even today learned new information, which I love. Um, in February, we had several participants talk about not wanting to be specifically party affiliated. And there are several positions where you're not party affiliated anyway. Can you share some advice and strategies for people who don't align or who don't want party support?
I think that goes back to what I referenced earlier about having a mission statement, about having a why. I think it's important to demonstrate to a donor, hey, I don't really identify with either the Republican Party or the Democrat Party or, any of the other third parties that are out there. But this is what I want to do, and this is why it matters to me to run. And I think having that unique mission statement of why you want to do it um, can make a difference, and I think can sway donors on both sides of the aisle.
I don't have anything to add to that. I think that's perfect.
That's wonderful. Are there, this is just follow up, are there like specific ways to share your mission statement or your campaign story that really helps connect you to donors?
I
Uh,
mean,
yeah.
fundraising letter, if you have a website, make sure you have an about page that talks about, your story. Social media, right? Like filming a selfie video, those are really popular where you can talk about your story, talk about your why, and it's in your own voice. Sometimes it's hard when it's just a tweet or, a Facebook post, just words on a screen. It's not like your voice, your um, intonation, your if you talk with your hands like I do, um, you know, being able to capture those really unique parts of your personality is a great way to be able to share your story and make yourself stand out a little bit.
I like that. Any other ideas, Mary?
I was going to say another thing is just going to community events. And, you know, the chamber has a business after hours. Well, it's a good idea to go to that and start talking to people because you can generate that word of mouth. Like, I go to the business hours and I'm a candidate X. Well, I'm going to tell my circle of influence, like, hey, I met candidate X at the Chamber's Business After Hours. She was really great. I really want you guys to get to know her as well.
That's amazing. Yeah. Okay, so are there new and emerging trends that maybe haven't been picked up as widely that are happening in political fundraising that people should be aware of?
I think Addie's probably
Heard
better
that's oh, okay.
than I am.
Well, so I was actually thinking about this when I got the questions last night of like what is quote unquote, I guess, new. I think in the digital space, things change very rapidly. There's lots of challenges making sure that you get to somebody's inbox in the first place, but then once they open it, making sure those, the links work and that you're not being flagged as spam, and that is constantly changing. And that can be difficult, especially if you're at a local or, a state house campaign that may not have a fully managed digital fundraising program. So that's always something that, I advise candidates to keep in mind is make sure you're being careful with how you're sending emails. How many you send at once can actually affect your entire email program if you have like a Google organization or like a Google suite. Um, so I'd always try to be careful with not sending more than 200 emails at once. Um, I think doing, handwritten letters versus an email sometimes can get you in front of people a lot easier than email, just given that there are those blocks that happen with Google, Yahoo, all the main providers look for different things in order to get your email from point A to point B. So just try to stay on top of that as much as you possibly can. It's challenging. It's a tough environment. It's constantly changing. Um, but with the right practices, best practices, you can definitely get in front of people. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's kind of something that I always am thinking about as I'm looking at fundraising.
Yeah, absolutely. Either of you can answer this, are there specific places that you gather information about like emerging things in fundraising? Like are there national organizations that you follow or that you could recommend? There might not be.
I can't think of any.
Yeah. I mean, I spend a lot of time on Twitter. And there's lots of quote unquote experts out there. So, take that information for what you will. I read a lot of like Politico also. That, helps stay on top of federal issues, especially for someone who's in DC. So, but that's just me and my personal reading habits. So
I like that. Thank you. Okay, so we'll start with Addie on this one. What are your most effective and creative strategies for thanking donors and also making them feel like they're part of your team? You talked a little bit about the newsletter, but donors are a different level, so.
So I'm a big like handwritten thank you note person. That's something I do in my personal life. But I do think that it helps you stand out from other people. There's a lot of people who kind of just get like screen printed note cards that you can kind of have automatically sent, which is there's nothing wrong with that, but I do think that the art of a handwritten thank you note has been lost, and I think that's a really simple way to show someone gratitude for sharing their hard-earned money, and allowing you to be a steward of those dollars.
I completely agree. Always send handwritten thank you notes. They took the time. It's easy to take 5 minutes to write it, to thank them. Also, sometimes just picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you what's going on in my campaign. We're starting a whole new digital platform, and I wanted to share that with you. And that was because of the investment you made in me." And just picking up the phone or sending a text with some kind of update.
That makes so much sense. I feel like it's also easy to stop thinking of donors as humans that care, and both of those make so much sense. And you were able to maintain the callus on your fingers, it sounds like. Um, okay, we have a couple of things that are coming in through the chat, so I'm going to read you a couple of audience questions. We'll start with Mary this time. When trying to run a grassroots campaign where you specifically will not take PAC money, what are some good strategies to attract small donor donations?
I think one of the best ways to do that is to have your core group of supporters and then ask them to have go through their list of friends and family to have a coffee or some kind of meet and greet, and you can make an ask there. It's a lot of personal connections, and just so that somebody gets to know you, and then they say, okay, I like what Mary has to say and what she wants to do. I want to give her $50 to help her get her message out there.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add there. I think that's great.
Okay. I think one thing that has been a repeated thing today is that your network also has a network, and using them as a way to gather donors or information is just clearly a very good thing to keep track of. Okay, so do you have any advice about using things like the party specific donation apps, and how early can you start fundraising?
It's never
Um,
too early to
Yeah.
start fundraising.
What was that?
I was going to say it's never too early to start fundraising. Once you launched your campaign and you're ready to go, start raising the money.
I was going to say, I think you just need to make sure you have a statement of organization, and the formal paperwork filed to get on those online platforms. I think they have to verify you are who you say you are. But yeah, it's never too early to start asking if you've made that decision to run. So
Okay, is there any tricks to using the party specific fundraising tools?
Um, I think both parties probably have a really good support on that. I'm not really familiar with Act Blue as much as WinRed, but they're pretty I'm guessing Act Blue is like WinRed and pretty intuitive on how to use it. And they've got a lot of people that are you can call or email or text for help.
yeah, I also have not used ActBlue, but I know WinRed, they send out like monthly updates on different features they've added, different methods to maximize your use of WinRed. So I would imagine there's something similar with ActBlue, and they share that information, I'm sure, on like a monthly or a quarterly basis.
That's a good place to get some information. Yeah, I like that. I won't ask about a specific candidate, but do your candidates or candidates you've worked for tend to write their own thank you notes, or do they have somebody on their staff help with that?
All the candidates I've ever worked for have written them themselves.
Same.
Sometimes that's easier for them to do than making the calls.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of that, easier to writing notes than making calls. Do you have any tips and tricks for people that are maybe introverted to be raising funds?
I would say the easiest trick is to just get started. You do the first one and every time is easier. It's like everything else. Once and the next time it's not as hard and you just keep plugging away at it.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Practice, just like everything. How should you deal with donations that are handed to you due to a certain amount that might need to go through campaign ethics?
Um, I would talk to, I think you have the ethics, someone from the ethics board, part of your panel. I would ask that to that individual, but I would get all of their information just like you would from a check or an online donation and let them know because it is over. And I think with state and local in Iowa, it's $25. I think I would just say, just so you know, I'm reporting this. I need to get your name, address, and I'm disclosing the amount on my campaign finance report.
Yeah, and I think at the federal level, it's any donations that are in an excess of $200. So if you have someone who gives you $10 20 times, that person, you have to report the information for that person. But yeah, I think make use of the Iowa Ethics Board, make use of the FEC. They typically want to help you because they don't want to have to deal with a potential financial violation. So they're always willing to help you on the front end versus trying to figure it out on the back end.
Yeah, that makes sense. For some of the campaigns I've helped run, even with the tip jar, we have people fill out the information. So that makes a lot of sense.
It's always
Okay,
better to collect more information than less.
I was just going to say over disclose.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
perfect sense. Okay, for small dollar donors, would you suggest asking for a dollar amount or leaving it up to the individual? How would you handle that?
I would recommend leaving it up to the individual.
I think if you're looking specifically at if you're sending a text message or an email or a social media post, I think there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, can you chip in 5, 10, $15? And kind of giving people a ballpark of what you're looking for. But I don't think that there's any magic number for what you can ask a small dollar donor.
And I think one of the good ways to do this in if it's like a friends and family letter type situation, you could say, I need to buy X amount of yard signs. Each yard sign costs this. Could you help me out with 25, 50, or whatever you feel comfortable? But giving
Yeah.
people those examples of
Mhm.
what it costs to run a campaign for city council is really helpful.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the sponsorship levels, that's what I like to refer to them as, is always it gives people buy-in and that goes back to making them feel like they're on the team because someone can say, hey, I gave $500 and I, helped produce 150 yard signs for this candidate. So when they drive through town and see your yard sign out, they can say, hey, I helped do that. And I always think that's neat, to really make people feel like they have a buy-in, that they're a value add to your team.
I love that too because it makes them feel like they're buying a product and not just an idea. That's genius. Um, okay. Somebody said they know it varies by office and district, but can you give a ballpark range for campaign budgets? That might be hard to do off the top of your head, but if you have it in mind, share it with us.
I'm trying to think, like I'm kind of adding up in my head, like what I want to say when my mom ran for county supervisor and it was an at-large county supervisor seat, I think she raised and her budget was about $6,000 or $7,000 for that. So there's, and it does vary. I think other people, my mom did a lot. She had big yard signs, small yard signs, and then she did newspaper ads and radio ads. So it kind of depends on what all you're going to do. I think for a school board race, those are typically about $2,000 or $3,000, depending on how big your community is.
It's tougher to say on the federal level just because every district and every state is different. So there are some campaigns that spend $800,000 and they're done and dusted, and then there's others who spend upwards of 35 to $40 million. So it really varies across the gamut. So
That's great. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, somebody said, how do in-kind contributions work? For instance, your friends provide refreshments for an event, or someone volunteers to drive and do door knocking and absorbs the cost of gas.
I can help with that. So if it's a fundraiser, just ask them what the fair market value was, basically what they spent on that, and then you can report it in on the Iowa uh, campaign finance reports. I think it's the Schedule E, where you report your in-kind contributions, and you know, Mary Earnhardt donated $256 for fundraiser food and beverages. In regard to gas for volunteering, I don't know if I've really ever seen that for somebody who wasn't the candidate. But I'd ask the ethics board that question.
yeah, and that on the federal side of things, when someone in kinds, that goes towards their capped amount of what they're able to give. So if someone in kinds $150 of, say they brought cupcakes to an event and they wanted to in kind that to a fundraiser, that would go towards this. It's now $7,000 that they can give between the primary and the general election. So that's always something to keep in mind too.
Yeah, that makes sense because somebody might do that hoping that they can still contribute a lot. That's a good thing to know about. Go ahead and participants, go ahead and keep putting questions in. I'm going to wrap up the part that I sent you earlier, but I really would like to know what advice you have that you would share with first-time candidates and what questions I should have asked and didn't think of. We'll start with Mary on this one.
Um, I think for first-time candidates, be fearless. It's it sounds intimidating to go and talk to a group of people. It sounds intimidating to go and ask people for money, but don't be afraid to do it. The worst thing that somebody can say is no. No, I won't support you. No, I won't give you money. But the best thing is somebody writes you a $500 check. And the best thing that could be is that somebody decides they want to volunteer for your campaign and come help you door knock. And so just be fearless. It's the hardest part of running for office is actually putting your name on the ballot. Everything else, I think, comes a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, just embrace who you are. Talk about what is unique to you. And something I will say is every dollar counts. Every $10 donation is $10 you didn't have beforehand. And I think valuing how those very quickly add up is an important part of the recipe too. Don't get down on yourself if you can't get a 500 or $1,000 donation. Starting with the 10, 15, $20 checks can make a huge difference, especially in, really close races.
Something also that came up earlier is about how long you have a span of time in a day, about how long should be spent on fundraising versus all the other campaign types of things that candidates do.
I think each day is different. And if I were advising somebody on a city council race, I would say try and take the equivalent of one day every week to work on fundraising, whether that's, spending a day going to meetings, like major donor meetings, meeting one-on-one with people, trying to get those larger contributions, or if it is having an event and like a fundraising event. I That's what I would say.
I also wouldn't tie yourself to a specific hour amount. I think you have to look at your goals and decide based on that how much time you're going to spend. And, there's a lot of times where you can shoot a text to a donor and say, hey, I'm hopping in the car in 45 minutes. I'm driving to a central committee meeting. Do you have time to chat? And try to find ways to build that into your day. So it's not you sitting and just making calls and calls and calls. Try to build it in so that it naturally fits into your day. Because especially if you're a state house candidate, and you're out your own road warrior, as I like to say, sometimes it helps to build in those calls then to maximize your time.
Okay. Any final questions in the chat or any final thoughts that either of you would like to share about fundraising or political campaigns?
I don't really have anything other than running for office is a rewarding challenge.
That's nice. A rewarding challenge. I would like to adopt that for my vocabulary now. Thank you both very much for being here. It was lovely to talk to you, and I appreciate the time you took out of your day. For all of the participants, we will be coming back together at 2 and learning about how to host campaign events. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you. Just about hosting campaign events, and she has been wonderful for years that I've participated in Ready to Run. Has a whole brain full of information, and I'm very thankful to have you here today. So I will turn the time over to you to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about your about campaign events.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to also ask Dr. Johnson if I can make sure to have screen share. So if I want to put up a few slides, if that will work. Okay. Now, the problem is I am going to need a little bit of engagement. So for those of you whose name I can see and face I can't, that's fine. But you all have buttons, right? Like I think you probably know how to operate a thumbs up or something. And so I need to get a sense of how your day's been and maybe in the chat, how about this? Tell me what you want to get from this session, right? This session is titled Campaign Events. Campaign events are typically fundraising. I would love to know a little bit about either something you've learned that you're really excited about and you want me to talk about more, or something you want to know and you want to get out of this session. So I'm pretty adaptable and nimble. I have an agenda. I know what I want to talk about, but I really want to make this great for you. So while you're putting the chat in, I'm simultaneously trying to figure out how to not make my face so big on the screen. Oh, is that because I'm speaking? That's why it's so big. Okay. It's not always fun to look at yourself. So I'm going to change the view so I can see all of you. Wonderful. Okay. So I'm going into chat, not seeing anything yet, but I know there is going to be something in chat. I can tell. Frederick, Amy, let's see, Mara, Team Butel, I love that. I love that. I love that. Team, team, team. So while you're doing that, I'm going to introduce myself. So my name is Jackie Norris, and I currently am a small business owner. I own a market research and management consulting business. I employ a team of women, and I love leading that effort. If any of you are small business owners or have ever thought about small business, I would tell you, please come talk to me. I have never worked so hard in my life, and I am a very hard worker. I also am a proud mom of 3. This is my first year as an empty nester. And I have to tell you, I feel like a whole new chapter of my life has just started. It's pretty amazing. And, but I will say amongst those 3, I have 2 that are military kiddos, and that's actually kind of awakened something in me that I didn't know existed, which was I'm a military mom. And that's been kind of interesting to navigate of late. And I am a school board member. I ran in 2021 and am running for re-election in 2025. I am the board chair, and this is my second year being the board chair. A little bit about my background. I know you saw my bio. I've worked for a lot of fancy people and helped lead their campaigns. National campaigns, state campaigns, some kind of regional, congressional campaigns, things like that. And but what I want to do is make sure as we go through this presentation, we really talk about local, right, and regional office, kind of first time office. And I am equipped to do that because I ran for office myself. And I want to tell you something. I mean, when I say I've worked for big people, like I've worked for the Obamas on the campaign, like really important people, I have never been more scared to run for a school board. I was terrified. And I know how to do this. And I want to say out loud to all of you, it is, there is a feeling of vulnerability that only you will feel when you put your name up there. And people are going to say not so nice things about you sometimes on Facebook. It's okay. It's human nature to want everybody to love you. And so the starting point really for me is I want you to know that walking into the process of running for office, you're going to feel vulnerable and you're going to feel maybe a little alone and a little scared. And I just want to say, as somebody who has done this, knows how to do this, has taught people how to do it, I was terrified to run for school board. So just want to put you at ease as it relates to that. I think I covered the big things in my bio. Give me a minute because I'm just going to kind of scan through and get a sense of what people want to talk about. Can say, can't say. Run as an independent. And I may come back to these. And Dr. Johnson, I might ask for some help to come back to them. Good. Investment versus return in events. Consultants talk about having a look. Okay. Common mistakes, people of perceptions. I want a city council seat. Look at that. See, faked it till she made it. That's it. Okay, so I'm going to share a presentation with you. And if we're being completely honest, and I know that one of you on this call is aware of this, I'm a little loose today because I was just not as prepared as I could be. And so with the help of my brain and ChatGPT, I am going to be showing you a few slides that I think are going to be good for us to talk about. So bear with me. Let me just get it going. Your why. Let's see if that works. Okay. Can everybody see that? Somebody just give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. So my hope here is I'm going to talk. I'm going to try to incorporate the comments that I saw. I'm going to leave tons of time for questions. And Dr. Johnson, you have full ability to interrupt me and just interject. I'm totally fine with it. So my task was to talk about hosting campaign events, tips for connecting with voters and building momentum. Headline, everything is a campaign event. Okay. That's the best way to think about things. Everything you do from the minute you announce is a campaign event, including when you're shopping at the supermarket. Everything is a campaign event. So the most important thing, I think, and I if I've covered something, I want somebody to like tell me, because it's really hard. I haven't listened to the full day. The most important thing before you do anything, especially host an event, is to make sure that you are super clear on your why. And hopefully in the past sessions, when you're fundraising, right, the whole trick about fundraising is you're selling a vision to someone. And somebody I learned very well from was Sally Peterson. In 1998, she was the lieutenant governor candidate. She was not an elected official. She did not have experience. She was a fundraiser, meaning she had worked on some charitable causes and raised money for nonprofits. But I sat and listened to her for an hour. Sally Peterson was not selling herself. She was selling a vision to someone. And I think it's really important as you listen to that, you're a conduit for something bigger. And so I have, I tried to look up like what was my first pitch because I wrote it down
Jackie?
and practiced it. Yep.
Somebody just pointed out that if you push present up in the corner, your slides will get bigger. So
You're awesome. Present in the
so up where it looks like a screen that's been pulled down, if you
see. Oh, this present slideshow.
Yeah.
From current slide. Yeah.
yes.
Okay. So again, everybody should have their pitch, right? Mine, and the reason I'm showing you mine is it's not fancy. Hi, my name is Jackie Norris, and I'm running to serve as your representative on the Des Moines School Board. I will be a champion and cheerleader for Des Moines Public Schools, staff, and students. I'm ready to lead in our community and improve student outcomes and support our public schools. That's what I'm selling. I'm going to improve student outcomes, and I'm going to support our public schools. And then, of course, I can't get there without you. Would you consider a donation of $500 today? Or I can't get there without you. Would you consider a donation of $10 today? But the point is, before you jump into events, make sure before you go in public and you're asking people to vote for you, make sure you have your spiel. And look at mine. It's not fancy. Don't overthink it. So specifically, I'll talk about events. And I saw somebody in the comments said, is it worth it? Right? It's a lot of work, like, return on investment. I think somebody had a question about that. Campaign events are a lot of work if you are creating them from scratch. And I think it's really important for everybody to understand that they are a lot of work. That doesn't mean they're not worth it, but yes, they are a lot of work. Why do you do them? Build name recognition, right? Build trust. Let somebody meet you face to face, raise money, enthusiasm, visibility, engage directly with voters, and show momentum and credibility. I am a big believer in action forcing events because I am a procrastinator. And my guess is just like all of you, I work. I mean, I've got kids, like we have lives, right? I don't know that any of you on this call are going to be running for office and have nothing else to do. And so it is really important to create things that make you do the work, which is why I think a campaign event can be good. Now, when you think about campaign events, people are showing up far less to events since COVID. It takes a lot for them to decide that they're going to dedicate an hour and a half or two to coming. And so you always want to think about how to make things as personal or authentic to you. So whatever you do has a little bit of personality. And so as an example for me, when I first had an event, the smartest thing I could do would be to get somebody who was far more eloquent than me and ride on their coattails. So I got a student, right? A student from Des Moines Public Schools who talks about why he, in this case, wanted leadership, right, from a school board member. And he steals the show, and then I get to talk and ask for money. So the point being, it's okay to share the spotlight with somebody else and help them tell the story about why this change that you're advocating for is needed. There's lots of different events. And I, again, not knowing all that you've covered, I'm going to touch on a few. And if there are ones that you want me to talk more about, maybe just say that in the chat and Dr. Johnson will let me know. The most important thing is choose the right format for what you're trying to accomplish. Everything does not have to be a perfect, polished fundraiser, but everything is a fundraiser. So get the difference, right? Wherever you are, you can be fundraising. In the supermarket, somebody says, how's the campaign going? Great. You know what? I'd love to ask you, can you give me $25 to support my campaign? Or can you give me your email address? I'll send you something. I'd love your support. Like every place you are, from the minute that you decide that you are running for office, is a fundraising opportunity. It's an event opportunity for the good and the bad, by the way, right? Just a reminder. I mean, I still go, I'm just a school board member, so I have a low profile, but just remember when you're running for office, where you show up and what you're wearing and what your t-shirt says, all of those things actually are important to keep in mind. Be who you are, right? So I will still go to the grocery store when I'm sick in my pajamas and flip-flops, but understand the potential ramifications of that. So meet and greet. This is by far my favorite one. Meet and greet can be really simple, right? And everybody has different names for this stuff. I say meet and greet, house party, fundraiser. House party and fundraisers can be the same thing, or they can be a little different. A meet and greet is as simple as meeting new people. It's a really great way when you're just dipping your toe in the water to start asking for help, because it is very hard to ask for help in the beginning. I know it is very hard to ask. So I have a friend, Joe. Joe's given me money. And so Joe says, how can I help? You know what, Joe? The way you can help is, could you bring 2 people to coffee? And maybe they have the ability to give some money. And it's just an opportunity for me to get to know them and learn more about what they think because they're voters. That's a meet and greet. You've just done it. And you've met 2 new people. And you've asked somebody, Joe, who's already shown you that he believes in you, to do something that probably is pretty easy for him, to find 2 friends who have some ability to give some money to join and meet you. That's a meet and greet. Don't overthink it. Second, house party. House party can mean lots of different things. A house party, think of it as it's a great way to expand your network. So typically it's hosted by a supporter at a house. Now, post-COVID, people are getting funnier about, like, do they want a whole bunch of people in their house? Ideally, it's in somebody's house, and I'll tell you why. Because they are wholly accountable for the success of the event. And I say that because if you're at a restaurant, it's kind of easy for somebody, if they didn't do anything to help, get a crowd, it's kind of easy for them to lurk out of it. At a house, it's their place, it's their name. And so they're accountable for the success of the event. Now, what is success? A success could be 10 people. Success could be 50 people. Success is that somehow you're expanding your network. And it doesn't have to have, like, you can't come unless you have a paid ticket. A house party typically is saying, hey, come meet this person. I'm supporting this person. I've given some money to this person. When you're done listening to this person, if you're so inclined, you can donate too, right? It's somebody will make a pitch at the end of an event, at the end of a house party. They'll say, I'm supporting, Jackie Norris, and I've chosen to give her $500. Can each of you consider matching that? Or can each of you consider giving her $25 before you leave tonight so she can walk out the door and buy X number of new lawn signs? But it's always really helpful at the house party that you have the person who lives in that house or somebody else who's known make a pitch for you, right? Tell them why they should give you money. And that's really important. That's a house party. You could easily turn a house party into a fundraiser by calling it a fundraiser, right? And a fundraiser means that you will, you'll donate to come to the event. Some people call it like you'll buy a ticket. You're going to donate some amount of money to support this candidate. If you show up and you haven't given money, it's a little awkward, right? I mean, kind of people are like, oh, I don't see you on the list, or, oh, maybe you haven't donated yet. Now, I mean, smaller races, that's really not that awkward, but, typically at a fundraiser, you're expected to give money. Either give money ahead, or give money when you show up there, write a check or a credit card or whatever. Now, to make you feel better, because that's my job, is to really help you understand how low the bar is. Can you see this list? Okay. When I did an event, literally my invite, I couldn't put both of them on it. The top said, here's my event. Here's the date. Here's the time. Here's the address. Here's my host committee. I mean, it's just names. And I show this to you, like, over the course of my campaign, people had given me money. And so I just threw them in categories. And it looks like I've got a lot of people hosting this fundraiser, when really they probably won't even come to the fundraiser. But it was my little trick to say, look at all the people that are supporting me. And I kind of generalized the levels. Sometimes you need to manufacture enthusiasm. You need to manufacture, I've got a lot of supporters. So just list anybody that's ever supported you and call them a host and put them in categories. Now I'm kind of being silly, but really, in all seriousness, I want you to recognize that it's not all going to be perfect. And you are going to have to, in the beginning, be brave and put your name out there. And when you get a couple people that are willing to support you, start telling people, oh, these people are supporting me, right? And then you get more people. And so use the names of people that have chosen to support you to get new supporters, because it just shows that you've got momentum. It helps you feel like you've gotten momentum. So with the fundraiser specifically, the event, I called that group my host committee. And so when I was making phone calls, I would call people and say, I have an event on April 28th, and I really need you to come, and I hope you'll donate. And then they'd talk, and okay, we'll role play in a second. And then I'd say, I really think I'd love for you to consider giving me $250. And, we'll put your names on the host committee list. Mean a lot to me. I do this once a year or once every 4 years. Please take a shot on me. Right. So the reason a fundraiser is good at some point in your campaign is it forces you to fundraise. It's also a galvanizing opportunity for volunteers who want to help you. You're going to get tons of people who say they want to help you. If you want to help me, here's a fundraiser. I have a date. I have a time. Here are the ticket prices, right? Start at $25, right? Host committees, I shouldn't just assume everybody knows this. Host committees usually are where you raise the money, right? So somebody wants to come, charge them a low $25, right? A low cost of entry, unless it's, I don't know, like Beyonce's coming, but I don't think Beyonce's coming for any of us. So a lot of your money, your $100 and $200 and more, are going to be raised in that host committee. But use that as a deadline to make phone calls. Use that as a deadline for your volunteers to make phone calls to help you raise money. That's how they can help you. I'm going to take a breath. Oh, one more thing on that. Donors do expect a program. And what I mean by that is they want to hear from you. And so at each event, right, the meet and greet is just like over coffee, but the house party and the fundraiser, you have to be prepared to give a little speech. Doesn't have to be a long speech, could be 5 minutes. Who are you? Why are you doing this? And a lot of times I'll stop there and say, ask me any questions. So you have to give them enough that they feel like you've taken it seriously, but you don't want to bore them. And so kind of, this is who I am. This is why I'm running, right? Maybe a little bit about the campaign itself or the office. There's maybe talk about its signature issue, but then say, I really want to answer what's on your minds. What do you want to talk about? Because then you're also actively listening to them. So I think those are really good, simple formats for a fundraiser. And then at the end, somebody should speak behind you and ask them to give you money. I'm going to take a breath. Dr. Johnson, are there any comments so far on kind of the meet and greet house party fundraiser? And if I went too fast, there is no dumb question.
There's one question that I think may apply here, but it might be better to talk about it later. How do you prep for somebody who just wants to bomb your, not like bomb, but like get you at your fundraisers or your events?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's going to happen, so everybody should just assume it's going to happen. And quite honestly, if it's, what do they say? Anything you say, assume it's going to be in the Washington Post or, whatever your local newspaper is. The video, the way people take videos, everything, just assume it's going to happen. And that is the best scare tactic ever, which is, okay, somebody might be recording this. And usually for me, it's Jackie, don't lose your shit. So usually a couple of things. At a fundraiser, it's pretty unlikely that somebody who is a detractor of your campaign is going to come. Now, did it happen to, I don't know, Joe Biden? Sure. But the likelihood, especially in smaller communities, that happens is probably less. Regardless, I think you should think about it in the sense of, how am I going to handle a difficult voter? That's what they are. Somebody's either going to say a lie about me. Somebody's going to, ask me a hard question. Usually what I do is I put a fake smile on my face and I give them a minute to be heard, because a lot of times this is about them wanting to be heard. And then I usually say, I really appreciate this is an opinion that you have. And either I'll say, I'm currently speaking and I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards, or help me understand what it is that is the essence of your question. Like, I'll just kind of probe a little bit and then pause, smile on your face. Because here's the deal, honestly, if you look like you're being calm and you're being patient and you're being empathetic to the speaker who feels very strongly about something, that's a good place for you to be in as a candidate, because you're exhibiting and demonstrating control and leadership. Now, at some point, you move from a democracy to a dictatorship. And, you need to figure out where that point is. But at some point, you just have to be firm and say, I think we actually just see this differently. I'm happy to have a longer conversation with you, but I actually don't want to sacrifice the time that people are dedicating to talk about issues or something like that, right? So it's easier said than done. I mean, I'll be honest, right? I've door knocked. And it's from the minute I open the door, it's very clear they're never going to vote for me. And so at some point, I slightly rudely, but very forcefully say, it's really clear we're not going to agree on issues. Thank you so much for your time. And I just walk away because it's not a good use of my time. I'm not going to get their vote. I'm not going to get their money, and I'm not going to convince them. And it's hard to do because they might be yelling at you, right? And this is all these are things I've learned with a little bit of age. And you know, my best advice is don't engage. Be calm, give it a little bit. But then there is a moment to be forceful. And it's okay for people to say, okay, yeah, like she tolerated a little bit and then she put the kibosh on it and she moved on. So if you have a volunteer with you or a staff, should you be so lucky, you know, another thing that I've done is to say, you know what, do you mind just sitting and talking with Ben for a little bit so we can better understand what it is you want to talk about and kind of try and pass that person off. So it's not easy, but really assume you're going to be on camera all the time because that's just what this life is like right now. Not at school board yet, knock on wood. But that's just the nature of how people are campaigning these days. Other questions? I think that's a great one.
There's a couple that I'm going to kind of smash together. So if
Yeah.
or Dawn, if I don't ask them quite right, say so in the chat. But the kind of like what mistakes do you see first timers making? And everybody thinks that an event is a thing, but often they're kind of boring. How can you create an event that's a banger?
This is a great question. First of all, do not spend a lot of money. It's so tempting to spend a lot of money and recognize that people like experiential or fun things more than anything. So be hokey, do a potluck and have, you know, 15 family and friends bring a dish to pass. You know, kind of build a theme off of that, like have like a voting for the best corn pudding. I mean, I'm just making stuff up, but my point is try and make things family friendly. Those are great too. A lot of people want to come, but they've got kids. And so make it okay for them to bring kids. Or on the invite, explicitly say, kids are welcome. And maybe you get a volunteer who is willing to have a kids corner, right? You know, and they just have a couple of toys and they'd be happy to try and entertain kids a little bit. You're right about boring, because it's a thing. Do you have any musician friends? Could they play music for 30 minutes? If you know, I'll use a school example just because that's fresh for me. Maybe there's a poet, like a written word poet, or there's a trio that, you know, you pay $75 to and they'll play for an hour or things like that. Be who you are. If you have tons of money and lavish tastes and want to go crazy, go for it. For me, my fundraiser was at my next door neighbor's house, and we opened the door and we sent invites out, and Liz is low key. She's like, there's beer in the fridge, cheese and crackers. I mean, it's okay. Just be who you are. I think the most important thing to do is when somebody walks in to an event, somebody's there to greet them. We're really happy you're here. Can we have your information? Oh my gosh, make sure they sign in. Name, email, phone number. If it's a fundraiser, ask if they brought a donation or if they're interested in contributing, right? So that first time, like the minute they walk into an event, it's a reflection on you. That's what it is. It's a reflection on you. So if you walk in and like, you don't know where to go and there's nothing there and it feels really inhospitable, that's a reflection on you. So think about it that way, right? If there's like barely enough cheese and crackers and waters and maybe lemonade, that's fine. For me, you know what it shows? I'm actually being very fiscally responsible. So, you know, I could go on, but I do think it's okay to be do something that's authentic to yourself. Like If you're a baker, we'll bake some stuff. But don't spend a lot of money because your goal should be that everything you raise are dollars that you can spend on the campaign. Should I keep going with just a few
Yep.
others or
That would be
okay.
great.
I think again, campaign events, that word event is I don't know if this was covered, so I just want to make sure when you think about events, mail, right? Like I just, as you're thinking about fundraising, there is mail. And by the way, I do very targeted snail mail because there are some people who really just want mail. And typically they're not just always over 65, but they're people who just value that piece of paper with a signature. Don't mass mail because it's too much money, but really think about people whose donation you want and see if they'd value. They'd probably really nice to see a nice note. An event, you can do an online town hall. Now, that's kind of painful, I'll tell you. Like I'm glad to see your faces here, but sometimes it's hard if you're talking to names, right? But you can do an online town hall and you can talk a little bit and you can have like every 2 seconds, somebody's putting in a fundraising link and maybe you set a $500 goal and, you just try to keep manufacturing energy for 30 minutes. That can be a fundraiser, especially if you have a lot of friends and family from outside of the state or in the state, but not where you live. That's a great way to let people see you in your campaign element. And or think about it as like a fun family and friends Zoom. And, everybody can tell like a funny moment about you. Like I met, Becky when she was X, or show your favorite picture of, so it's just about being okay with being authentic, being not fancy. That doesn't mean the other candidate isn't going to be fancy. They may be, and that's okay. Let them be them, you be you. Make sure you do a video for Facebook. If you go to Jackie Norris for School Board, you can see mine, and it is a humdinger. It's homemade. Doesn't need to be anything more than a steady, make sure it's steady. And what I do, and like, I don't know if you could see my eyes because we're kind of far away, but I actually have my little spiel up there. So what I do when I do videos, I actually just put Post-it notes and papers on my wall, and then I record. So I really look like I'm authentically telling you what I want to say. But when I forget, I just look up and I have it written right there. So just a little tip when you're thinking about if you're recording yourself, that's a way to do it. And like I said, anything online too is an event. I think I'll wrap up on this one by saying any event is a fundraiser. Just remember that. So again, when you're in your pajamas with flip-flops at the store, you should have campaign material that has your email address, or you should tell them what your Facebook page is or how they can donate or support you. Okay, I'm going to take a breath. Dr. Johnson, what kind of comments or questions? Because I want to make sure we use the time wisely because oh my gosh, it's about done.
Yeah, we're about done. So I think my final advice or question might be just one solid piece of takeaway advice. And are there any questions that we should have asked that none of us thought about?
3 things. And I also should say, and everybody should know this, I am completely accessible. I really encourage you. You can go to Des Moines Public Schools. You can find my email address. You can ask Dr. Johnson. I really want everybody to be successful. 3 things to remember. Number 1, remember what I told you. I've led national campaigns. I've done really cool and big things. I was terrified to run for Des Moines Public School Board. It is okay to be anxious, feel vulnerable, feel self-conscious. All of that stuff is completely normal. Number 2, thank you notes. I'm like a fanatic about thank you notes. It is really important. And you can make a phone call and say thank you. You can write a little card and say thank you. Emails are fine too. but personal thank yous are so important. And sometimes I think when you like the Act Blue or whatever, fundraising platform you use gives like this auto-generated one, that's not enough, right? Make sure you send something a little bit more personal. And then the last one, if you haven't figured out, be yourself, be authentic, have fun, involve your family in parades and stuff like that. And I have no doubt everybody's going to be amazing. Thank you.
so much for being here, and I'm sorry about the email snafus.
We're good.
You're amazing.
Oh, well, thanks. Well, hey, be on the lookout for we have 4 Des Moines Public School members, unless there's somebody on here that's running, that we're hoping to run again. So our goal is we have a really great school board in Des Moines, and so we want to encourage our candidates that ran before to run again. So hopefully we'll have success in Des Moines.
Sounds great. Thank you so
Okay.
much for being here today.
Okay, I'm going to stay on and just listen for a little bit since I missed a
love
lot of
that.
it. And I'm going to look at the comments in case there's ones that I should respond to.
Perfect. And Vanessa, thank you so much for being here today. We're to introduce them, these are our specialists in the rules and regulations. We had a speaker on the laws earlier today, and I think people knowing more about the rules and regulations will make everybody feel a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to you. We gave you permissions to share slides if you wanted to do that, and we will get going.
Thanks so much. I actually don't think that I can. I'm using one of the Office's backup Macs. And I don't know that I can share. I might download it and send it to you if that's okay.
Absolutely. While she does that, Vanessa, would you like to introduce yourself? And
Oh, sure. Vanessa Sayasan, and I'm an auditor I'm a legislative auditor with the Iowa Ethics and Campaign Disclosure Board. Been in my current position for about 14, not 14 years, over almost 10 years. And yeah, basically that's me.
And my name is, sorry for the technical difficulties here. My name is Taylor McDonald, and Vanessa has been at the agency much, much, much longer than me. But I joined as assistant legal counsel in September of 2023. So I've gotten to see my fair share of campaign cycles, both at the local level, hi Jackie, and at the statewide and legislative level as well. So have a little bit of not nearly as much as experience as Vanessa, but a little bit of campaign experience I like to tout. So I'll start with a little bit about the agency. I know we don't have a ton of time, and Dr. Johnson, I did send you the slides. Okay, perfect. Hopefully you can. Again, I'm using a backup Mac from our office, so I don't even have PowerPoint on this thing. Anyway, the agency was created in 1973, mainly to focus on campaign finance, and we were reorganized in 1993 to include the ethics piece, which I'm not going to touch on a lot today, but if anybody has any questions on Iowa Code Chapter 68B and ethics, conflicts of interest, gifts, those kind of things, definitely reach out to the office. We're happy to answer questions anytime. My boss would be remiss, and I think Vanessa can giggle about this as well. My boss would be remiss if I didn't say to everyone that we are a Watergate agency. We were created in the aftermath of Watergate, and at its core was Watergate at its core was a campaign finance scandal, right? Nixon was using campaign finance money to do illegal things, right? So that's when states started to step in all over the country, and the feds created the FEC for this kind of work. Currently, we are statutorily supposed to have 6 board members. Right now, we have 5. We've had an open vacancy, an open seat for, oh, Vanessa, you probably know more than I do, but at least since I've been here, definitely longer than that. The board appoints my boss, the executive director, and legal counsel, but the 6 board members are all appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. We also have 6 additional staff. Vanessa is one of 4 auditors in the office. The auditors have different scope So we have a local auditor. Tim does city, county, school board campaigns. We have a PAC auditor who's specifically focused on PACs and other kinds of political committees. And then we have Vanessa, who does legislative, paired with Marie, who does legislative and statewide. So she'll handle all of the gubernatorial candidates, the auditor candidates, the treasurer candidates, that kind of thing. Are you having technical difficulties, Dr. Johnson?
Yeah.
Okay, no worries. So depending on what you're running for, is the auditor that you'll connect with. And like I said, well, all are great to work with. All have been very well commended on their customer service. We like to pride ourselves in not being a gotcha agency, and being easy to work with, but particularly through campaign season and campaign filing season, the auditors really are very hands-on with their committees and willing to help at all points. Kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but our jurisdiction is over Code Chapter 68A and 68B. 68A is what I will focus on today, just because that is the campaign finance and the campaign aspect of what we do. 68B is our jurisdiction is over executive branch ethics. So again, gifts, conflicts of interest, but specifically to the executive branch of state government.
Taylor, are you able to see the slideshow?
I am.
Okay. What slide would you like me to be on?
You can now move to the third.
Our mission?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. The third slide, our mission of the Iowa Ethics and Campaign Disclosure Board is to promote the public's trust and confidence in government by ensuring the integrity of political campaigns, which I know is what you all care about the most. Dr. Johnson, I'm still only seeing the first slide.
All right.
That's okay. I've got them up too, so I can, Lord knows I can talk, right? Which is what you all care about. And then the ethical standards for officials and employees of the executive branch and state government, and the lawful conduct of executive branch lobbyists. So that kind of covers, like I said, all of our jurisdictions. 68B covers everything that's not campaign finance, and 68A covers all of the campaign finance pieces. Perfect. That's perfect. Perfect. Appreciate you. So this slide is to kind of highlight the big campaign finance activities, and Vanessa can talk a little bit more about these too. And they're not, as I went over these slides last night, they're not exactly in the right order. So I would say first and foremost, with regard to campaign finance, we do the auditing of campaign finance reports for compliance, right? And then anything that comes up as a flag in a campaign finance report, right? Our auditors will flag for the attorneys on staff, and then we will do the investigation and enforcement of possible penalties with the vote of a board. The other two pieces, drafting advisory opinions and providing legal information and guidance. I separate those out because one is more informal than the other. Anyone under our jurisdiction is allowed to request an advisory opinion, which does take a vote of the board. But sometimes it's just easier, right, to call us, shoot us an email, say, hey, I'm thinking about fundraising this way. I know Jackie mentioned a lot of examples in her last presentation. I'm thinking about fundraising this way, or I'm considering doing, a bingo night or a pass the hat, and we can kind of help you be able to, one, do those legally, but two, report them in the correct way with your auditor. And Vanessa, I don't know if you have anything you want to add on the audit process generally.
Just that simple changes or simple things that we can easily change for the candidate, or something that on our auditor level we can do the fixes ourselves rather than escalate them to our legal counsel and so forth. But if it's just the main, I wouldn't say offenses, but the main issues are the ones that we would forward to our legal counsel. Otherwise, if it's just something simple as a check number was wrong or a date was wrong, then the auditors would just simply change that for the candidates.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I mentioned, I think we're trying very, very hard not to be a gotcha agency, and we understand that this is not at the top of everyone's skill set, right? A lot of folks have volunteer treasurers. Obviously, folks at the State House are part-time legislators, full-time employees, and trying to do these reports too. So we just want to make sure, and in the interest of transparency, we want to make sure that things get fixed. Whether that means, hey, you're not cooperating, you're not being responsive with us, so we do move to an enforcement piece, or that is just, hey, I communicated really well with my auditor and let them know, a week in advance that I was having this issue, and they helped me remedy it. I think is important to note. Thanks, Vanessa. Thanks for bringing that up. Perfect. This in terms of committee responsibilities. So when you cross the $1,000 threshold, which is for taking in contributions, spending money, or accruing any debt on behalf of your campaign, you are required to register a statement of organization with us. That basically means you're creating a committee and availing yourself to the requirements of Chapter 68A. Your treasurer, there's a few pieces in Iowa code. You can be your own treasurer. I think, Vanessa, some committees can and some can't? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
You have to be 18 years old and you can be the candidate. Thank you. I answered my own question. I've been back and forth in the last couple days between schedules for different kinds of committees, so I just wanted to make sure. You must keep the funds in an Iowa financial institution, and I know that sounds limited. Wells Fargo counts, right? Online banking counts, as long as we can avail ourselves to, or as long as they can avail themselves to our jurisdiction, right? Just in case I ever need to subpoena a bank for records, right, from your campaign account, I just have to be able to do that. You must get if you're taking in contributions, you must get them to your treasurer within 15 days, and then the treasurer must deposit them within 7 days. Now, with the way things obviously are working in fundraising online, that's a lot easier to do, right? That's a lot easier to meet. But when folks were sending snail mail and sending checks in snail mail, or just passing hats and taking cash, things get lost if you wait that long, if you wait too long to do those things and deposit those things, and then they get harder to track. And then we, question whether or not, the information you're putting in your report is accurate. So those two timeframes are prescribed in code. And then lastly, everyone that donates over $25, you have to collect the name and mailing address of those people. Under $25, we do not need the name and mailing address, but that is also in the aggregate. So if someone is giving $25, say they give $5 every month, right? That batches to $25 after 5 months. Now I'm going to start needing their name and address, if that makes sense. Additionally, just some more kind of caveats. A lot of these are obvious. You can't use your committee funds for personal use. You need to keep track of all of your expenses, including the name and address of those folks. You have to keep, your campaign finance records. You're supposed to keep them for 5 years if your committee remains open for that long. If you end up dissolving, you can get rid of those records after 3. I know that this is a lot easier now. Obviously, ActBlue, WinRed, those kind of online fundraising tools. And we also, since we've moved everything to our web reporting system, also have access to these for a lot longer. This is obviously very different than if someone is bringing a stack of paper to us at 4:30 on the filing deadline, right? So we have access to those records for a long time too. You must use our web reporting system, though I know that anyone in the office would make an exception for folks who don't have a computer and need to file in a certain way. I think it's prescribed in code that we have to do that too. So, and then lastly, reports cover your contributions, both monetary and in-kind, expenditures, loans, debts, and property, campaign property worth $500 or more. Vanessa, is there anything that you wanted to add about the reports?
Nope.
Just to highlight some of the things, some of the bigger things that we've seen in the last few campaign cycles, we've taken before the board. You can't spend funds from an unknown source. So if an envelope shows up on your doorstep with $30 in it, and you don't know where it came from, you have to escheat that money to the state. You can't spend it on behalf of your campaign, and we can help you with the escheat process as well. Second, making contributions in the name of other people. That means contributions, say my friend wants to make a contribution, but it is prohibited for whatever reason, so I make it on her behalf, and I don't disclose that the money's actually coming from her. That's illegal. Using a fictitious name is illegal. And making made by a person who borrowed the money from someone else. So that's borrowing it from a bank if you don't disclose the bank, that kind of thing. Again, back all the way back to the original source of the money. And you also can't take in contributions from insurance companies, savings associations, banks, credit unions, or corporations, that being both for-profit, and nonprofit corporations. We do see that. We do see that every campaign cycle too. Folks think that they can take money from nonprofits. If they are, we do a quick search ourselves, and you all have the same access that I do to the Secretary of State's website. But I do a little business entity search, and they're either classified as a corporation, or they have articles of incorporation, or they are owned by someone with articles of incorporation. That means they are barred from giving under 68A. Moving away from reports and into political materials, these would be the things that you obviously spend money on, right? Campaign signs, brochures, ads on TV, that kind of thing as you're running for office. Political materials, certain political materials do require attribution statements. If they are designed to expressly advocate for a candidate or a ballot issue, they have to include a paid for by statement and who they are paid for by. Now, that depends on if folks are registered with our office, they can use their committee name, right? Because we have their contact information and it's readily available to the public. If you do not have a registered campaign with our office, you can choose to file what's called a DRSFA. And I don't even think that's on this slide, but that's just claiming a short name for your organization. But it also kind of indicates that you haven't crossed that $1,000 threshold in requiring you to make a committee. Or you can just use your name and address, right? If you're putting out brochures, those kind of things, again, because we want folks to know, we want folks to be responsible for the things that they're publishing, basically. Exceptions are for obviously news and editorials, small items that make attribution statements impracticable. We talk all the time about like pencils. If you can't fit it, there's an exception for you. But I always default to, and I know it's the practice of the executive director as well. If you can, please do. It's just easier when we get calls about, hey, I got this weird thing on my windshield, or hey, I saw these bumper stickers and I don't know, who's paying for these. If we don't know and we don't have easy access to that information, it kind of tarnishes the reputation of those in the community, but also just raises a lot of red flags, and folks can't follow the money, if you will. Make sure I didn't miss anything. I don't think so. Okay. In terms of campaign signs, there's there's do's and don'ts, right? You can place them on residential property with permission, agricultural land, by individuals or family farm operations. That includes, and the one thing I should have brought up when we were talking about prohibited contributions is LLCs are allowed to contribute. So they are allowed to also have campaign signs on their property. And property used as a campaign headquarters, right? If someone's renting a space, they can have their campaign signs there. You cannot place them in public property, including right-of-ways. That usually entails maybe a call to our office and also a call to the DOT or local law enforcement to help us remove those. Believe it or not, and I know Vanessa would love this, but we don't have our campaign sign enforcement vehicle where we just travel the state and take down illegal signs. That would be a long day for everyone and a long campaign season for me. But so we usually do invoke the help of local law enforcement, or when complaints come in about campaign signs, we usually contact the campaign or the property owner directly and just say, hey, you got to take this down. Prohibited contributors, like I mentioned, you cannot place, because they can't give you a contribution, they also can't give you their corner, right, or their space to put campaign signs. So that would be banks, credit associations, any corporation, right, including nonprofits, cannot have campaign signs. And then lastly, we get a lot of calls about people placing signs without the property owner's permission. Obviously, the property owner is allowed to take that down, right? And campaigns have been called out for that in the past, particularly if you're just walking down Main Street and slapping signs, right? Couple more mentions about campaign signs. Like I said, the sign, if we make the determination that the sign has been improperly placed, we can ask you to remove it. If we can't get a hold of, the property owner for whatever reason, we usually head straight to the campaign and ask them to go remove it. Or again, local law enforcement, if we can't get a hold of anybody. A question we do get a lot, so something that I wanted to make sure was in here, there is no time limit on like that's a property rights issue that I do not want to battle with anyone. You don't have to take down your campaign signs within 6 weeks of the campaign, within 3 weeks of the campaign, right? They can be up for as long as possible. And I don't know, or as long as you allow them to be, if you're the property owner. And I don't know if that was changed, but it's definitely something we get questions about a lot. And we have no jurisdiction, and this goes for campaign signs, but it's across the board. We have no jurisdiction over federal candidates. That is an FEC, the Federal Election Commission issue. So we can flag things for them and send things up the chain. But I can tell you, if I don't have a car policing campaign signs, the FEC definitely doesn't have a plane. Just for reference, if there's a Trump sign that someone wants to complain about, I can't ask anyone to take that Trump sign down. Vanessa, is there anything you want to add?
No, well, basically, we're, like you mentioned, we're not a gotcha agency. We're here to help. We're here to assist you guys in any questions or any concerns that you may have. All of the auditors, all four of us, are willing to help. And we actually do prefer that you reach out to us before you do something that you don't know about or anything like that, because it's best to be ahead of it than be reactive. It's better to be proactive than be reactive when it comes to our jobs.
Yeah, and I would say too, I think that's not just obviously our auditors, and we've been complimented so many times on the customer service of our auditors as I walk over to the legislature. But also our board feels that way too. So I would even say for things that, your auditor does raise a flag for and send to us to possibly take before the board, if we can't get things remedied. The board is not into being punitive by any means, and really just wants, like I said, the mission of the agency is to have this information all available to the public. And really at the end of the day, that's what they're looking for. So I think and that's an across the board opinion, and also something that I would share. If I could give anybody one piece of advice, I just got off the phone with someone that we had a board meeting last night, and we find this woman, and I just got off the phone and she asked me, what can I do for people like me? How can I help people like me who just don't know that these laws exist? Well, before you do anything, give us a call, right? Let me help you. And let me get you something that it says in writing that we had this conversation, that we approve of the tactics or the gift or whatever it is you have a question about. We approve before you do that.
Taylor, I think there's a question.
Yes, I can. So a little bit with my basic attorney knowledge. So apologize if there are any other attorneys on this call and I butcher this. So LLCs, it's a limited liability company. And from what I understand, the designation when it was first created was for those businesses that are not necessarily small businesses. They're not sole proprietorships, but they're also not giant corporations. Now, I will tell you that is not always the case. Google is technically an LLC, based on the way that they are organized. But in Iowa campaign finance law, I can speculate that because that a majority, right? A lot of our legislators, a lot of folks that are running for office own their own businesses, are family farmers, those kind of situations are lawyers, are attorneys. And saw the need for the difference in campaign finance regulations between the two, because one is apparently smaller than the other. Now, I don't think that's, like I said, that's not always the case. But that's my limited understanding.
And how us auditors distinguish between an LLC and a corporation is the business entity search on the Secretary of State's website. That's how we determine which is which.
I'm going to put the business search, sorry for my typing. I'm going to put the business search in the chat.
So somebody shared an example. My little ice cream stand in town can donate, and my family-owned farm that is an LLC, but not Casey's or Dollar General. Is that the right idea?
Yes, correct. Without me looking to make sure that Casey's and Dollar General are corporations and not LLCs. And I would say your little ice cream stand, if it's not organized as something, cannot give in the name of the ice cream stand, right? That would be something where you would give personally. Does that make sense? But if you have, say, Casey's is a corporation, but Come and Go is an LLC, Come and Go can give on behalf of Come and Go instead of having to write a check as the president and CEO writing a check to someone, right? Or having to form a PAC. And actually, that's not true because if you cross the threshold and you're an LLC, you still need to form a PAC with our office. But and to do under $1,000 things, they can give as the organization. Does that make sense? Am I explaining that okay?
I think so. Somebody asked a question, and I just want to make sure that we have asked it. Are we able to sell items for fundraising?
Yes. Vanessa, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, you can. You can use campaign funds to purchase items that would go towards fundraising because it is committee related. I hope that makes sense.
But you can also sell things. Like we could sell
Yes.
t-shirts, right?
Mhm.
A campaign could sell t-shirts, could do call us first, particularly if you're going to do something like this, but you can do like a silent auction, stuff like that. We just need to make sure you have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed, particularly with licensing. But yes, you can sell things. The campaign can sell things in order to make money.
I think that's all of the pre-sent questions.
I'm so sorry, I talk so fast.
No, you're great. Oh, here we go. Look at this. Our rule is different if you are self-funding, like for a small campaign where you need less than 10K.
No. You would still have to file a campaign committee with us, and all of your reports would just show reimbursements to yourself.
If you go over the $1,000 threshold.
Correct. And yeah, $10,000 is over that threshold. But yes,
Yes.
if you can do things on your own as long as you stay under that limit and not have to worry about our office.
Other questions?
That was a very quick rundown. Also, I will tell you, there's a ton of resources on our website. If you ever have any questions, we just published candidate guides. Last year was for state house and candidates. This year's guide will be for local candidates, so school board, city council, county candidates. So if there's ever a question, one, please call, but two, please, there's FAQs, there's a lot of good resources on our website to be helpful. And again, even if you're working with a party, if you're not working with a party, hopefully they have some tips for you too. And we always do presentations like these for them.
Somebody asked, can campaign signs be placed on commercial properties if they are an LLC?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes. The code reads that there is a prohibition on campaign signs for prohibited contributors. Prohibited contributors are corporations, not LLCs. So you can have campaign signs on LLC property. And we always go back and forth too. And again, if there are any questions, but say I live in an apartment above a bar, right? The bar is a corporation, but I'm a resident. Can I have my campaign sign if the properties are mingled, that kind of thing? So we always take those on a case by case basis as well. And it just kind of depends on the shared space. That's been a lot of conversation back and forth between the director and I. So if you have any questions like that and you're, hey, oh, and the other place would be within 300 feet of a polling place on election day. So that's something to consider as well. When you're in a small town and you live above the bar that just so happens to be next door to the church, that's serving as a polling place. It gets complicated.
That's tricky.
Signs are the bane of my existence.
As somebody who has worked as a campaign treasurer, I just want to vouch for y'all. The help was immediate and fast and generously given. So I just want participants to know that when they say that, they're not just self-vouching. That has been my real life experience as well.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay, are there any last questions? Well, I've never met anybody who's mad about getting out of a meeting early. So thank you so much. And for participants, please think about registering for April. It's going to be a wonderful program, and you'll be able to walk away with headshots and a version of your personal political narrative that you can use for your campaign. So I just encourage you to sign up, and hopefully we'll see you then. And thank you, Taylor and Vanessa, so much.
Thank you.
you.